Hello everyone, Jack Delahy here, founder of collegeconsulting.us, and in today's video I'm going to go over what is truly, I believe, one of the most important items in your college admissions checklist to help you as the high schooler succeed in standing out in college admissions. So, a little bit of context here. 20, 30 years ago in college admissions, what I'm about to explain mattered much, much less. These days it matters much more. College admissions landscape is constantly changing. Just as an example, so you know, one of my top students this year got into Cornell. Well, he'll be going next year. Congratulations to you, Massimo, if you're watching this. The Cornell admissions rate this past year, 8%, perhaps even 7% when all is said and done. The Cornell admissions rate in the year 2000, 31%. I bring that up because you can see in 23 years we've gone from 31% down to 8 or 7%, depending on the final metrics Cornell releases. I give that context to explain what I'm about to here. 25 years ago, what I'm going to explain didn't matter as much, but the game has changed. The goalposts have moved, and so if you're watching this channel, my goal is to give you the most up-to-date information, which is why I'm going to explain to you a very important concept that every family in our paid program understands, and that is the following notion. Different is greater than difficult. Different is greater than difficult. A little bit more context here. There are 4 main categories of college admissions. 1, high school grades and the rigor of classes you take. 2, standardized testing, SAT or ACT. 3, your college essays. And yes, it is essays. You have your Common App personal statement. You also have your supplemental essays that go to every school. And then number 4, your story. This notion of different is greater than difficult is all about category 4, your story. So, back in the day, in the year 2000 at Cornell, 31% admissions rate. If you had this, and you had this, and it reached Cornell standards, guess what? You're probably getting in. That's how it worked, right? 31%. A third of all applicants got in. And so, yeah, they were looking to see, do you have strong grades? Do you have a great standardized test score? And if you had pretty decent essays, boom. Guess what? Congrats, you're going to Cornell, you're an Ivy League student. These days, not so much. They're rejecting 93% of applicants. Category 1 and Category 2 get you through the first round of admissions application review. Then what happens? Goes to the next round, where they take a look at your college essays and what I call your story. Now, in the college admissions landscape, you hear this called a lot of different things. You hear this called extracurriculars, leadership activities, but in our program, we call it your story for a very particular reason, because it is holistic and it encompasses everything that you're trying to tell admissions. So, now that you have that context, let's get into what this notion of different is greater than difficult is. And what I'm going to give you as a link in the description here is what I think is perhaps one of the most profound exercises I've ever created for my students. Parents of high schoolers, real quick, and then I'll get you right back to this video. If you are finding value from the video, I have one request, because I'm never going to run ads on these videos, I promise. And so my one way to really share these videos to the masses is to ask you for a favor. Do you mind sharing this with any other high school parents that you know might need help? You can do that by directly sharing, like via, just texting the link to the video, or you can also share on your socials like Instagram or Facebook. It would mean a lot to me. And lastly, if you're really, really getting value and you want to make sure that you're subscribed, you can click the like button, the subscribe button. It'll help the algorithms let you know when my next video is released. Now, back to more value in our paid college confidence program, and I'm just going to give it to you for free. So, link in the description. The exercise will be called the different is greater than difficult activity. As an aside, if you want more, because I'm going to try to make this as short as possible for YouTube, but if you want more, if you want the entire 40-minute lesson that goes step by step through the exercise, you can click the link for the entirely free college confidence community. You can fill out 3 questions. I'll personally review them. Once accepted in the community, click the classroom. You can go to the different is greater than difficult exercise. You can actually see me go line by line through the exercise. But today, for the sake of this, what I'm going to do is talk about the different is greater than difficult exercise on a high level. The goal of the different is greater than difficult exercise is to realize that when it comes to category 4, your story is, to some extent, about standing out from the pack. When admissions department is looking to reject 93% of students, those 7% that get accepted are the ones who stood out. And yes, my student this year, Massimo, who got into Cornell and is one of those 7%, he certainly embraced category 4 and this notion of different is greater than difficult. So let's actually dive in now. What are the nuances of different is greater than difficult? The nuances are as follows. A lot of times students come to me and they say, Jack, I've signed up for 6 APs. Should I take that 7th AP? Guess what? Taking any AP class, the time spent in class, the homework, the tests, etc., that's difficult just in terms of hours spent. Like, that's a lot of hours spent. That is difficult. And to be honest, the rewards of taking that 7th AP are minimal compared to, right, what I typically then tell students. Instead of taking that 7th AP, let's think about all the hours that are going to be spent taking that 7th AP. Let's consider not taking that 7th AP. And let's consider using even just a percentage of those hours and see if you can do something different, unique, that aligns with your story, that will stand out in college admissions. So as an example, let's just say that between the time in class, the time spent studying, the homework assignments, the actual test taking, let's just say that taking that 7th AP costs 200 hours of time. Now, I don't know, but I feel like that's actually pretty reasonable. 200 hours of time, it might even be more. What story are you trying to tell admissions? And how can you use maybe a handful of these hours? Let's talk maybe like a quarter of them, maybe 50 hours total over the course of an entire year, and just do something that is a little different. And so when it comes to Cornell rejecting 93% of applicants and they're saying, yep, same as the others, same as the others, same as the others, all of a sudden you have something in your application that says, whoa, that's different. So how do we actually go about finding what this different thing is? Well, the first thing is you've got to think about what kind of story are you trying to tell admissions. Typically when we do this, we work backwards from the end goal. What do you want to do in college as your major? What might your career want to be? And then we work backwards from there. So let's actually give the example of my student Massimo. Right? Massimo knew he wanted to be an engineer, and specifically he thought mechanical engineer, right? So the story he is trying to tell admissions, the end goal, right? If we have, this is today, the end goal is your major in college admissions, and he wanted to be an engineer, right? So now that we know that, is there something that Massimo could do that just is a little different, unique, stands out from the pack, that aligns with that story, okay? Now in his case, it actually was pretty easy because he was already doing it, he just didn't realize it, right? He had been for years reconstructing dirt bikes in his garage with his father, assembling the parts, taking them apart, putting them together, right? Let me tell you this, over the course of a year, maybe it required 50 hours of effort with his father. You know, every other Saturday for a handful of hours type of thing, right? Now, it's interesting because when he came to us, he didn't even realize that this was something he could use in his college applications. And by the time he ended working with us and applied to Cornell, it was his activity number 1 on his Common App, because we told him it should be his activity number 1. Why? It aligned with his story of wanting to be an engineer. And guess what? It was different. Now, if you asked him, was reconstructing dirt bikes with his father difficult to the extent of taking an AP class? I think he'd laugh, say absolutely not. Was it fun? Was it exciting? Was it interesting? Yes, yes, and yes. And so this notion in college admissions of different is often greater than difficult is really important. It's amazing what you can do if you embrace the notion of different is greater than difficult. So that's one example. Now, I'm going to walk you through briefly on a high level the exercise that is linked in the chat. Again, if you want to see me go through line by line this exercise, you can actually either download the exercise, read it yourself, or if you want to watch me go through the exercise while I share my screen, you can click the link to the College Confidence Community, apply to join. Once you're accepted, this video is in there. Detailed, 40 minutes of me going line by line through it. But for the next few minutes here, I'm just going to go high level and explain how you can go through this different is greater than difficult exercise. Okay, from a high level, this requires basically 3 steps. Step number 1 is to say, what things or items or things in this world am I interested in? Right? And by the way, I'm describing this in terms of what a high schooler would ask themselves. So here's what we have. We have circle number 1, okay? We're going to call this interests, passions. The goal here is to fill up this circle with up to a dozen. You'll see in the exercise, I think I give space for even 20 plus. Interests and passions, right? The goal is not to think yet about college admissions at all. So this can be, I enjoy playing ice hockey. I enjoy video games. I enjoy puzzles. I enjoy cooking. Okay, you can see how that works. The goal is not to think about college admissions. It is to simply list out things that you find interesting, that you actually would want to do. And yes, as an aside, I put it in another video, there's my Saturday morning test if you really are struggling with what you want to do, which is basically just the hypothetical scenario. You wake up on a Saturday, you can't access your phone, you can't access the internet, you can't go back to sleep, and no, there's no homework to do. What would you do? Typically, the answer to that question should go inside here. Step number 1. Again, do not think of it from a college admissions mindset. Think of it from a just, what am I interested in? Then, step number 2, draw this circle. This is what things, if you heard that a 14, 15, 16, 17, 18-year-old accomplished, would you say, wow, that's pretty unique / impressive / cool. Again, I don't want you to think about college admissions. I don't want you to think about your interests and passions. You are going to completely forget this circle for a second. So, things that I often hear, right? So let's say impressive. Things that I often hear. Students will say like, started a podcast. Sure. I would agree that if a 15-year-old actually started a podcast and consistently did, that would be impressive. Had students write, won an Olympic gold medal. Yup, I agree. You can see, don't hold back, right? There is truly, if you think that it's impressive that a 14 to 18-year-old did it, put it in here. I've had an author. I've had $1 million business. Absolutely, right? I've had won a triathlon. Insert different types of awards. You got it, right? On and on and on. I think I even had someone say ran a 4:30 mile. I agree. The point isn't to really judge yourself on what you're putting here. Anything that is impressive, anything that you would say is impressive. That is step 2. Now, step 3. And again, if you're following along in the exercise, we're getting towards the bottom of the document now, is where the fun begins. And the goal of step 3, use my black marker. This is the goal of step 3, to find the overlap, okay? What potentially, it just has to be one thing, but what potential interest or passion or something you actually enjoy, aka the answer to your Saturday morning test, might you be able to somehow overlap with a medium that is deemed impressive, right? If you can find just even one combination, amazing. Right? So just even for my example that I completely made up here, right? If you're super interested in video games, I'm using this because a lot of parents, you might be watching this saying, how could video games possibly help my child get into college? Take a look. If you're super into video games to the point that you are super passionate about it, I don't know. Could you possibly go to Amazon, self-publish a book about the top video game cheat codes that you discovered from playing for thousands of hours? Now all of a sudden you realize, if you actually did that, and again, to be clear, you're probably saying, well, I could never be an author. I beg to differ. Do you remember what I put up here? How that 7th AP class that's super difficult took maybe 200 hours of time? Students underestimate what they can do with the same amount of time that's typically dedicated to high school activities that are just more common, like taking an AP class. Right? Do you think with 200 hours you might be able to make a pretty good dent in a self-published book about the top cheat codes you discover in video games? I think likely, right? In fact, I actually think there's a chance you might be able to do it with less than this amount of time. And that's just one example, right? Again, to be clear, what the purpose of this is to take something you're interested in that may actually be just a little bit different, unique, stand out, and put it into a medium that will stand out in college admissions that is impressive, right? The ultimate goal of this is to help build up that category 4 of admissions, your story. And this methodology, this worksheet, is the number one way in our program that we have students do this, and we've had hundreds of students at this point come through, complete this exercise, and say it was life-changing for them. Link in the description for the actual exercise. It'll be titled The Different is Greater Than Difficult Exercise. And again, lastly, if you want to see a 40-minute lesson where I walk through this start to finish, go line by line, share my screen and go through it, you can click the College Confidence Community. You can apply to join. We'll then accept you. Once accepted, you can go into the entirely free classroom in there. We have over 300 members at this point, and you can go and click the Different is Greater Than Difficult exercise and see it in detail. I hope this was helpful. I hope this helps launch your high schooler on a path to realizing that there's more than one way to gain admission into college. And grinding out 7 APs and not being able to sleep nor have fun is not necessarily the only way. There is a way to be different, to stand out in admissions, to actually enjoy your process, and yes, to gain elite admissions acceptance, just like we had this year with our high school senior Massimo. Until next time, have a good one.